Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
If Hamas breaks the calm and attacks Israel, our response will be very powerful.
The longest-serving prime minister in history, a strong ally of former President Trump. But recently, his support has slipped.
It appears opponents of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have succeeded in forming a coalition government that would remove him from office.
The man often called the great survivor in Israel may have finally run out of road.
It ends Benjamin Netanyahu's 12-year term as the country's longest-serving prime minister.
There were late-night celebrations after the vote, ushering in the post-Netanyahu era. Supporters of the new incoming government have rallied in recent days.
Hey guys, PayDroV here. Quick short video because I just want to touch on the subject real quick. We've been discussing Israel for a couple weeks and months now, from all the tension going on, and during Passover, supposedly the Messiah arrived, false Messiah arrived. We had all these protests, people and police clashing. Then we had the rocket attacks, the ceasefire, and so on. Practically, they allowed the whole world to get involved at this point because everyone was choosing sides between Palestine and Israel, and you had many people in protests around the world in support of Palestine, and just a mix of emotions, energy being manifested. Now we also discussed this whole new government that was coming and how Netanyahu was getting heat for it, and eventually he did now get removed, and this is what I'm going to touch on just a bit.
Just as Israel has the right of self-defense, the United States has exactly the same right. Qasem Soleimani is responsible for the death of American citizens and many other innocent people. He was planning more such attacks. President Trump deserves all the credit for acting swiftly, forcefully, decisively.
If you actually look at these people's names, their both name is Ben. Benjamin, Bennett, Netanyahu, Neftali? Like, are they serious?
It appears that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could be replaced by the right-wing former defense minister Naftali Bennett.
This is definitely the end of an era, isn't it, with Netanyahu being out, but he's not going out quietly at this point.
And don't let the faces fool you. This is the end of an era and the beginning of a new one.
When I came into office, I promised to look at the world's challenges with open eyes and very fresh thinking. We cannot solve our problems by making the same failed assumptions and repeating the same failed strategies of the past. Old challenges demand new approaches.
This is an opportunity to pursue our common goals of security, prosperity, and peace.
There's always an agenda with these things, as we saw in America. And why is this guy split into three?
But he'll have to share power with political rivals, the powerful centrist Yair Lapid, and the man sitting here on the right, Mansour Abbas, from an Islamist party representing Israeli Arabs.
Why do they have to be three leaders instead of one?
Well, for the first time in more than a decade, it looks like Benjamin Netanyahu will soon be out of power in Israel. In an unprecedented move, leaders from 8 opposing parties have united to push him out.
Last week, Israeli opposition leaders Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid notified Israel's president of a new coalition deal to oust Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and form a new unity government. What's the tone like on the ground there right now? A lot going on.
That's exactly right. It's never boring here.
Honlin says what happens in Israel has an impact in the U.S. and around the world.
So I think that you will see increased stability, and people can look to the situation, whoever is the government, it will now be able to settle down and really begin to implement the policies. It will be in terms of allocation of resources, development of towns, Arab, Christian, Jewish towns that may have not gotten the attention in the past, expanding further the educational system.
The new government will be comprised of 8 parties, including an Arab-Israeli party, an historic move that marks the first time an Arab party will join an Israeli governing coalition.
Americans are now having to take what appears to be a loyalty oath to Israel if they want to keep their jobs. This is not an obscure law passed in one state. It's a law that's now passed, as you can see from the map behind me, a law that's now passed in 24 states. 13 more states have pending legislation on this. There's the map. Shows the states in red that we're talking about, the ones that have passed this law forcing their state workers to sign this agreement that they will not join any economic movements or boycotts against Israel if they know what's good for them, if they want to keep their jobs.
There's a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to continue digging, and we're going to soon find out what is really going on. But just know, people are celebrating on the streets, woohoo, and this and that. But, I mean, look at the names, guys. It isn't that hard to connect 2 and 2 together.
We are on a timeline of history. The world did begin. The world as we know it will end, and there will be a transition.
The transitional period is called the tribulation by adherents of biblical prophecy. It's part of a system of interpretation called dispensationalism, which is favored by some evangelicals and fundamentalists. According to their theory, there will be a 7-year period that culminates in unspeakable suffering that will be dominated by Christ's antithesis, the Antichrist.
Starting in the 1830s all the way up to the present time, there's been a rather consistent teaching about the Antichrist. They believe that this would be a personification of evil, a kind of messiah of Satan, who would gain power at the end of the present historical age.
He's unifying the world. There'll be a sort of a one world government and a one world currency and a one world religion.
And God would then pour out horrible judgments on the earth against Antichrist, against his followers, and millions upon millions would be destroyed.
The world will be in turmoil, and the world will be looking for one significant leader that will draw the world together under the banner of peace and safety.
He will bring prosperity to the world. He will affect the economies of the world in a positive way.
He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week.
A biblical week, believers assert, is equal to 7 calendar years.
What really triggers the 7-year period of tribulation is the agreement that the Antichrist negotiates with Israel. It's a peace treaty for 7 years.
In the middle of the week, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering.
3.5 years into that, he will break that treaty.
He shall speak blasphemies against the God of gods.
His ultimate characteristic is pride. He believes he's better than God, he believes he's higher than God, he deserves to be enthroned.
All right, so I just wanted to quickly touch on that real quick. You guys let me know what you think. I will come back to the subject, but right now I'm actually working on some other things. So with that being said, have faith, remain vigilant, and God bless you all.